Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing this evening? It is 10:34 p.m. and it is 71 degrees on this, I wouldn't say beautiful, but cooler summer evening. It's not as hot and muggy as it was. And I just looked on the weather before I left, and it's supposed to be like 70 something tomorrow. I think maybe just 70, and then like 74, and then like 80. The next week is not supposed to be great, so mild is that what they call it. If you're a meteorologist, mild. The next week is supposed to be mild, but not necessarily great going to the pool weather, which is kind of sad. And I'm gonna open my Diet Coke. Say my name, say my name. I don't know why that song is in my head, but it got stuck in my head. I just got done uploading my videos a little while ago, and then Alex came home. He got home about 8:30, 8:45. They stopped by Melissa and Jason's to drop something off to them. And then they were talking about going to see Dead Mouse here in Indianapolis. And Alex was asking me if I wanted to go. So we may all do that. And then Alex came home and he heated up. I guess he got two orders of chicken fried rice from the Thai place. And so he heated that up, and he was watching the new Gossip Girl that just came out, I think tonight or yesterday. He was really excited about it. Alex has been watching like all of the old seasons of Gossip Girl. He loves that show so much. So he finished that, and I was like, I'm gonna go vlog, and he said, okay. And he said, I'm gonna go upstairs and watch another episode of the old Gossip Girl. So he was upstairs, and Boo Radley was following me everywhere, because when the phone, like when I get like a text message, and like, you know, that ding that it makes like on the computer, Boo Radley hates that sound. He's like so terrified of that sound. So he was coming over to me, because I always kind of hold him whenever like certain sounds Boo Radley really has a hard time with. And so I always just like hold him and, you know, pat the back of his neck and stuff. And so he came over to me, and then he wouldn't leave my side after just one text message. So then Alex went upstairs, and then I went upstairs because I changed my shorts. And now I'm vlogging. And that was pretty much my day. I vlogged earlier today, and then I posted that, and then I came home and I made some other videos, and I had a good day. I had a fun day. It rained off and on all day long today, and it was like really like torrential downpour rain. Like it was like heavy rain. So talked to my neighbor across the street for a little bit. What else? That was it. It was pretty much my day. Not a whole lot happening, and I'm gonna listen to my audiobook for a true crime book club when I get done. I don't know why this is not wanting to like just stay in this beanbag tonight. Keeps on moving. I'm gonna listen to, it's called The Babysitter. I actually really like it. I like the way that it's told. It's almost kind of told like a mystery or a suspense novel. And she's very descriptive in talking about like when she was younger, and because it goes back, because this guy, this Tony Costa, that was a serial killer, I guess he killed like 4 to 8 people. I looked on the Wikipedia page, and he was like the maintenance man in this hotel where his, like, I guess they lived, or his mom worked, their mom worked or something, this girl. And so it's kind of like it goes forward into the future, and she paints this like hilarious picture of her mom, first of all. And like she said something that her mom at the beginning, like about him being a serial, she's like, Mom, he was a serial killer. And she's like, what do you care? He's just the maintenance man. And it's so funny, like the way that she paints this picture. She does a great job with the characterization of it. And I actually think she is the one like telling the story, but I think she has a ghostwriter, because it's the two of them together. There's 2 women together writing the book. And so I think one of them might be a ghostwriter. But it's interesting the point of view that she goes in and takes, basically, of knowing this guy, and that she didn't know that, you know, like, he babysat her and her sister, and that he ended up becoming a serial killer, which is kind of what it's going to be about. So anyway, I'm not that far into it yet. Donato's Pizza said open late. I'm like, I wonder how late they're open. Like, Donato's Pizza sounds really good right now. Do you want to hear kind of a weird story? Do you remember, like, where you were when certain things happened? So I was dating my ex, and I think it was the first year that we were together, because he was still living in his hometown when 9/11 happened. And I remember I was working in the treatment center that I worked at, and my supervisor and I, we were like the first two that were there in the morning. We were there really early when it happened, and in the lounge, like in the day lounge area, there was a TV on, and she came into my office and she said, and we were like the only two there besides like the techs, and she was like, come here for a second. And so like I came out of my office and she had like this like just distraught look on her face, and she had it turned to the news of what was going on. And I remember we were sitting there watching it when the second plane hit. Like, I can remember standing there in the lounge, like we were standing up by the nurse's station, and we were like, all of a sudden, like the second plane hit, and they started talking about that. I was like, oh my God, like, I can remember being there and standing there. It was like just the most bizarre thing, the most bizarre feeling in the world. And I can remember, like, the phone started ringing, and then they had, like, a meeting. This was probably, like, 10 or 15 minutes later, and, like, the phone was calling for her because they had a meeting of, like, the directors of each program for what we should do. And so they were trying to send as many people home as they could, and so, like, she was trying to have, like, all of the counselors not come in and stuff like that. And so she said, we've got to get these shifts covered. And so I was helping her get the shifts covered. And she was like, as soon as we get these shifts covered, you know, like, you can go home. And she sent me home. And so I can remember, like, there just was, like, traffic everywhere. And everybody was trying to get home. And everybody, you know, left work that day and everything. And my ex was still in Seymour, where he was from. And so he was like, what are you gonna do? And I said, I don't know, like, I'm hungry, but, like, I don't want to really be, like, out on the roads and stuff. People didn't know what was gonna happen. They didn't know if it was gonna be, like, mass hysteria, or they didn't know, you know, if it was gonna be, I can't believe, what is tonight? It's a Thursday night. Broderpool is packed tonight. There's all these people on the street. This is crazy. But, you know, I can remember on the news, they were, like, you know, speculating about, you know, more attacks that could possibly happen, on and on and on. They didn't know what was going to happen. And so they were, you know, just telling people to get someplace. And so I don't know why, but I ended up, I think I was going in there to get a pizza, and I went into Donato's Pizza in Fishers, Indiana, and I ended up ordering, like a small pizza and a sandwich, like a sub sandwich. And I can remember sitting there, and I don't know why, I don't think I've ever since then got a sub sandwich from Donato's, maybe, but I don't think so. And I ordered a sub sandwich, and I can remember just sitting there and watching it, like, on the news, the TV they had in there. And it was like my phone was just going off like crazy. Like, every 2 seconds I was getting a text from somebody that was like, are you safe? Like, this is crazy. Like, what's going on? And at the time that it happened, I had a couple friends of mine that lived in New York City. And I can remember them, like, mass texting people and being like, you know, I'm safe, I'm okay, blah, blah, blah. One of my mother's best friends, who actually moved home not long after that, when she and my mom graduated from high school, she started working at Block's, which was a department store, and she ended up working her way up. She was a buyer for all these different stores. For a period of time, she was a buyer for Bonwit Teller, and then Lord & Taylor, and I don't really remember where she worked at the end, and I haven't talked to her in a long time, but she ended up being, like, the, you know, in charge of all, like, buyers for, I think it was Federated stores or something like that, like Macy's and those stores. And I remember her telling me later because she really helped in taking care of my mom. Like when my mom was sick in the hospital, and like when she came home, she was there like every day. And I remember asking her once, I was like, you know, what was 9/11 like for you? And her husband at the time, they're since divorced, but her husband at the time, they lived in this like high rise in New York City, and she said they could like see like over the towers and stuff like that from their apartment. And she was at work and she said she had just stepped outside and she could see it like rolling down, like the smoke and stuff like rolling down the street, and they like quickly ran inside. She said she's like, you can't even explain what it was like. And her husband sitting in the apartment like could see the whole thing, and just unbelievable, you know. So sad, so incredibly sad. It seemed like the whole world stopped, you know. There's actually like, what's that country song? I really like that country song. What were you doing when the world stopped turning? Do you remember that song? I like that song. I can't remember who it's by. I don't know why I'm getting real emotional thinking about that. I mean, it just was like this moment in time that the whole world stopped, and I think like in the aftermath of it, you know, it made you like really appreciate the life that you had, you know. It was weird, like I can remember when I was growing up, you know, my mom would talk about like knowing exactly where she was at certain times. She's like, I can remember when, like, you know, with the Kennedy assassination, because I remember where I was and everything when that happened. And she would talk about knowing where you're at when certain like world events happen. I really can't think of like other things that have happened like where I was at that moment. Not like that. Like I can remember that whole day like very clearly. You know what another one is that I remember, and actually this is from when I was younger, but I remember when the space shuttle exploded. And you know, when I was in school, when I was growing up, I would miss as much school as I possibly could. I think you could miss something like 12 or 15 days a semester, and I missed exactly how many days you could miss before being truant, because I hated being at school, because, you know, people at school were not nice to me. So I loved not going to school and being sick, and I faked being sick a lot to not have to go to school. And to the point where sometimes my mom would just be like, I'll call you in. She just got so tired of it, of dealing with it, you know, I think. But I must have been like in 5th or 6th grade or 4th or 5th grade or something. I feel like I was in elementary school. I think I was almost positively in elementary school. So it would have been like 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade that I was in when it happened. I can see myself sitting in, like in our living room, which is weird because I had to, like, I can see myself with the TV pulled out, which is like this TV that I'm sure it's hard to believe, but I still have it in the basement, this TV. And, I had it pulled out and was watching something, I don't know, when it switched to coverage of the space shuttle taking off. And so I was sitting there and I was watching it because like nothing else was on the TV. I was watching, I don't know, game shows or something probably. And I sat there and I can remember like my mom had run to go get something, or I don't know where she had gone for just real quick, I think. And I was just sitting there watching the TV, and I can remember just like it just all of a sudden exploding. And I remember what a huge deal that was when I went to school the next day, and everybody was talking about how they had been watching it in the classrooms when it happened. And I remember we had to like process it in school. And then I remember that one female astronaut, like we did special projects about her in school. Or she wasn't an astronaut, was she? She was like a citizen that went up in outer space or something like that. Or was she an astronaut? Isn't that horrible that I don't remember? I feel like her name was Christine or something like that. Those space shuttle takeoffs used to be such a big deal when I was growing up. Like, I can remember everybody like watching those. And I remember the first time that I was in Florida, like my dad, you know, his fraternity brother lived in Sarasota. So we would go down to Florida to visit them quite a bit. And not just on holidays, but other times as well. Like, we did go on holidays a lot, like Thanksgiving and Easter and stuff, but I think we went some other times too, I don't know. But I remember being down there once, maybe it was in between, maybe it was fall break or something, I don't know. We went down there and I remember standing outside and like everybody on the street looking up, and it was the space shuttle going over. And you could see it, like you could, I mean, it wasn't like a plane, but you could see it like in the sky, you know, and you could see like the what's it called, the trails, you know, behind it and stuff. And I remember everybody looking up. It seems like a completely different world, you know. It's like, we don't really talk about that as much anymore, you know, like stuff to do with space. Like, and I know that like that whole era in the 80s was called something with space, right? But like the Great Frontier or something like that. But like, people were really obsessed with outer space. And I mean, I've always been very interested in outer space and aliens and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, people were really, really interested in it in the 80s. Like, I can remember like growing up and, you know, like neighbors, dads, and, you know, friends of mine, their dads would have like, you know, telescopes and stuff. And I mean, it was like a really, like, people really were into all of that stuff. And, like, I can remember being in school and you'd ask people like what they wanted to be when they grew up, and they'd say astronauts. Like, nobody says that anymore, do they? And the kids say they want to be YouTubers. They don't say they want to be astronauts, you know? Was it the Great Frontier or the Last Frontier? The Last Frontier, I think. Just was a different world, you know? I feel like when I was growing up, and I'm sure every generation thinks this, but it's interesting to me that Stranger Things takes place almost exactly at the time, where's my lip gloss? At the same time that I was growing up, because it feels like there was a lot more mystery and intrigue and magic in the world when I was growing up. You know, it seemed like anything was possible, and I mean, it really did seem like, you know, the neighbor down the street that never came out of their house could be a serial killer, and, you know, there were like, I mean, like Stranger Things, like if it, like what was happening in Stranger Things wasn't like really happening, like if the kids just thought that was really how we thought back then, like we really did think like poltergeist and all that stuff could be totally possible. Like, it wasn't just scary movie kind of stuff. I mean, as kids growing up, like, we really thought, like, oh my God, like, this could be possible. You know, it just was a different world. It was a world filled with mystery and intrigue, and, you know, you never knew what was going to happen next. And there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened. There really was, you know, like, I feel like, like, I don't know, every couple weeks, and this kind of was how summer was too, you know, like, you'd hear the moms in the street and they'd be talking, they'd be like, did you hear about so-and-so, like 2 streets over, and blah, blah, blah. I remember when we were growing up, I think I just talked about this not too long ago, there was like, some kid at this like, there was like 4 kids in the family, they lived close to my dad's partner at the time, and, my dad's business partner, and like on the same street, I think. And the kid had like eaten a bunch of, this must have been the late 70s, I don't know, but the kid had like eaten a bunch of LSD and then stabbed his mom. And it was like a huge story when I was growing up in Carmel. There was also another story about, there was this woman on the street, and And this was true. Like, I saw her several times, and she would stand in the street, and she wore from head to toe, she had real long black hair, and she would wear, like, on the street, she would wear, like, black dresses or black, you know, she was always, like, in these old black dresses and stuff. And people called her Crazy Mary, and you weren't, like, supposed to go to her house on Halloween. I mean, everybody talked about it at school and stuff. She didn't live anywhere close to us. She actually lived in, like, the main part of, like, downtown where I grew up. And, so, she, but, like, people were not nice to her, you know, people were really mean to her, to find out, like, years later. I actually think I was talking about it on a vlog, and somebody messaged me and said something about it, that, like, she just truly had, like, mental health issues and stuff, and just, you know, it's so sad. And that's really kind of like what Boo Radley was like in To Kill a Mockingbird, you know? Everybody was scared of him, but nobody really took time to understand what was really going on. I remember my mom always being nice to people that were misunderstood like that. I think there was a huge piece of her that was like that too, and I don't know, maybe it was because, you know, my mom had her own mental health issues, and, you know, she understood it on some level or whatever, but I just remember my mom, like, I think when you're taught that stuff, it doesn't, like, you know, go away. It seeps into your soul somehow, and you remember that down the road. I don't know. You know, it's interesting, is I remember, and I actually have talked about this on here as well, I remember when Central State Hospital closed, and I think I looked it up one time, but when I was in graduate school for my master's degree in social work, we talked a lot about it as almost kind of like a social experiment, because, like, of what happens when these institutions close down and they don't have housing to put people in. So Central State Hospital was like Indiana's psychiatric hospital, right? And I don't know what happened, if it lost funding, or I don't remember why it closed down, but they didn't have room to house all of the people that were there. So literally a lot of these people that had been psychiatric patients of Central State Hospital for 20, 30 years, had never lived anywhere else, were basically on the street, or they would go to facilities that they were placed in, like group homes and things like that, you know, or family members that they didn't know, they had never met, and then they would leave, they would run away. And so it was like overnight, Indianapolis had this huge homeless population in a way that we hadn't had before. I mean, we always obviously had a homeless population, but not in the way where we had a high population of homeless people directly from, like, a psychiatric facility like that, right? And so what happened was, and it's really sad, that a lot of these people, they found their way back to Central State, which had closed down. It's since been turned into condos, I think, but they found their way back there because that was the only thing that they knew. That was the only place that they knew. And so they were basically, you know, squatting and living in Central State Hospital, and people would come in, and it was horrible. I mean, you would hear about these stories on the news and stuff that, you know, like, these homeless women that had been patients at Central State Hospital, these elderly women that had been there for 30 years or something, were coming back to live in Central State Hospital, and they would find them, and they had been, like, murdered and raped and all this. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And, you know, and it was just like, I don't know. And I can remember when we were talking about it in my master's program about, you know, the importance of placement and systems theory and things like that, as far as, like, getting people connected to, you know, good caseworkers and all of this so that they always have people that they can trust, because a lot of it is about trust. And the reason that people went back there was not because they were probably getting the best service in the entire world. I mean, it's a state-run psychiatric hospital, right? But the fact that that was all they knew, they trusted that environment, they trusted that, you know, and makes me sad. Makes me really sad. My cousin Caroline and I were actually talking about this today, and it's like, we were talking about, like, I don't even know how we got on it, but we were talking about how you hear so many people today with diagnoses of like bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder and anxiety and depression, and not just like I have anxiety or I'm anxious, but like serious anxiety and depression, you know, debilitating. And Caroline and I were talking about how, like, is it because we don't remember it being like that when we were growing up. Like, I don't remember when I was like in high school and in my early 20s, even when I was in treatment, you know, I don't remember all of these diagnoses the way that we see them today. And so Caroline and I were talking about, well, was it just that people weren't getting appropriate diagnoses back then? Was it that, you know, people weren't getting treatment? We were talking about the fact that there's just is not affordable. There's not affordable good mental health and substance abuse treatment in our country. There's not. It's piss poor, and there just is not enough of it. And basically you got to jump through hoops and get on waiting lists to get good affordable treatment. You know, like in Indianapolis, I know 2 to 3 treatment programs. You know, because like somebody, either myself or somebody I know is always trying to help somebody get on a waiting list to go into treatment somewhere. And when you like are like, well, you know, do you have $4,000 to put down on a deposit? No. You know, do you have insurance? No. Okay, well, let's see if we can get you on a waiting list for some of these places. And there actually are in Indianapolis several really good halfway houses. Not that people don't use in halfway houses, because they do, but they're really well-structured, well-staffed halfway houses in Indianapolis. And then there's also several good treatment programs that are low-cost treatment centers that are charity pay, or the state pays for it, and things like that. But the problem is that so many people are trying to get into these programs because so few people have insurance or cash that they can just, I mean, I don't think people really understand how expensive treatment programs for like substance abuse is, right? And let's not even start talking about mental health treatment, because mental health psychiatric facilities are probably 3 times as expensive as substance abuse treatment facilities. They just really are. You know, you're looking at, for 30 days in a, let's say, a residential, which is a cheaper, you know, level of care, for not at like a detox unit. If you're looking for like going in and detoxing, and then, you know, what else? Detoxing and then being like in a residential program for 30 to 90 days. At 30 days, you're probably looking, and I'm not talking about a low cost, I'm talking about one of these that you see on TV, okay, an ad for a TV. For 30 days, you're looking at anywhere, depending on like nursing care, the doctor's care, prescription drugs, you know, if people are being on Suboxone and being monitored, you know, or whatever else, depending on what level of care you're getting, you're probably looking at anywhere from $40,000 to $100,000 a month, okay, for one of these 4-pay programs. I know programs that are like more than that for 30 days, okay? So if you think about 90 days, you're looking at anywhere going from, let's say, because you would drop down to a lower level of care, obviously, you're looking at anywhere from probably $60,000 to $200,000, depending on what these programs are like, and what they have to offer. I thought there was like an area for me to turn around right here. Or what they have to offer, and is it 24-hour nursing care? Is it doctor care? Because, you know, a lot of people, like if they're detoxing, they obviously need to have that. Then, if you go into a program where insurance pays, well, insurance doesn't want to pay for these programs anymore. So what they do is, they'll say, okay, we'll detox you one day, And then we're gonna do an outpatient rapid detox, which people are highly not successful on, because what you're doing is you're putting the person right back into their same environment that they were at before, okay? Which is they have access to their phones and calling dealers, and it stopped, right? Okay, right? So even if you are on a drug like Suboxone, right? Okay, which is a maintenance drug for opioid users. It's what's it supposed to be is a slower detox over a long period of time. That's how they utilize Suboxone. Some places they're using it for well, a lot of addicts, like on the street, will use it for maintenance. But the Suboxone, which is called buprenorphine, the reason that doctors started using it was to detox patients that had had several failed attempts at treatment and could possibly die the next time, right? So I used to kind of have, and it's important for me to be honest about this because I think that we change and how we look at things over time. I used to be such a Puritan that I was like, I don't know how I feel about people being on Suboxone working 12-step programs, but after having had several friends of mine, and I mean probably 20 to 30 friends of mine who now I have a friend of mine that has double-digit years of sobriety that has been on Suboxone the entire time and works a program like nobody else, that would not be alive today and would not have the family that they had and the career that they have if it wasn't for Suboxone. I look at it in a completely different way, but I do think that it needs to be, medically managed, with an aftercare plan and things like that. But this is what insurance companies want people to do. They want them to go into treatment. They want them to do some rapid detox in 1 to 3 days, put them out on the street, put them on a maintenance drug like Suboxone, like that's going to slowly, get them down. Which, to be really honest, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to drop your levels before you get on Suboxone and raise it back up. You can't really do that in 1 to 3 days of a detox. It's just really hard to do that. So you're putting people back out there in their home environments or on the streets, and then saying that they need to come to a partial hospitalization program like 5 days a week with nothing to do on the weekends except for go to meetings, or they're supposed to go to IOP 3 nights a week, depending on what their insurance will pay. This is what good insurance will get you today. Good insurance, okay? I have had people that I have known that have relapsed and gone back out, and their families have literally fought with insurance companies to try to get them 2 weeks in a treatment facility or a week in a treatment facility just to get them away, for a little bit. And I am a big believer that, I'm not a believer that geographical changes are the answer to our problems, because the basic text tells us that that's not true. But I am a believer that to remove somebody from their environment while they're using, I don't know, had I stayed in my apartment and I had just done an outpatient program, which I had done before, and gone home and drank, I don't think that I would have been real successful if I had got out of treatment after 3 days and gone back to my apartment and whatever. I just don't think I would have been successful. I am such a believer in a 30-day treatment program. It just breaks my heart. It so breaks my heart. And then I have friends of mine that, talking about mental health treatment, that have, you basically today, it's really hard to get admitted to, now think about this, okay? Even with a psychiatrist that you've seen, which a lot of people don't see psychiatrists, they don't see anybody, they don't see psychologists, counselors, coaches, whatever, but a psychiatrist, is somebody that knows about, psychotropic medications and all this kind of stuff. But even with a psychiatrist on your side, it is almost next to impossible to get admitted to a psychiatric facility for an evaluation or for help unless you go in there and basically say you're going to take your life. That's the truth. And then they only keep you for a couple days, and then they move you into an intensive outpatient program or a day treatment program, whatever, where you basically write off any liability if something should happen to you. The same thing with substance abuse programs. And it's so frustrating to me. It's so frustrating to me because if insurance companies, which, if you think about it, people bust their butt to get insurance, and then they get in a situation like this, and they're like, I've been paying to this insurance company for 10 years, and you're telling me that my child or my wife or myself can't get the help that I need? Well, this is the benefits that we offer. You knew that when you signed up for insurance. No, most people don't know that. They really don't, and it's worded in such a way that people don't know that. And so then what happens is they're left with these, dare I say it again, piss poor solutions to substance abuse treatment or mental health treatment. You know, if these insurance companies were smart, what they would do is they would say, we're going to give you one 30-day treatment program per life, per person that's insured, because it has been proven that 30-day treatment programs work so much better than putting people in and out. And so what happens is you have somebody that goes in and out of a treatment program 4 to 5 times in a year with this little rapid detox thing that they want to do, and put them in an outpatient program, and they're using again in 3 weeks. And people are dying, and we wonder why people are dying at the rates that we're dying in our country right now from opioid overdoses. And then you have treatment programs like in Indianapolis. You have a couple treatment programs here that have really great counselors and are, you know, so there's Salvation Army Harbor Lights in Indianapolis. And most cities have a Salvation Army treatment program. And I do believe to some degree they're Christian-based. I think a lot of people don't like it because of that. But it's one of the only affordable treatment options. And here in Indianapolis, Harbor Lights, which I've gone to quite a bit and interacted with them, like, I've had friends of mine that have relapsed, and they're like, I don't know where to go. And I'm like, what about Harbor Lights? I'm not going to Harbor Lights. I'm like, well, they have beds, they have food, they're giving you, you know, 3 square meals a day. And they're like, okay, I guess, you know, whatever. And so they go, and then they, you know, find out what a great program it is. And they have a residential program and a rehab program and a detox program and everything that, you know, is about, like, I don't even think you have to pay for it. I think they recommend a donation if you get, like, into it. Their waiting list is a mile long. And they have such a great reputation in Indianapolis, you know? But it's hard to get into it. And then the good treatment centers that I know of that are for pay, if your insurance company won't approve it right away, or they won't approve it at all, you have to put like a $5,000 or $6,000, $4,000 deposit down. Who has that? You know, like, it's just, I don't know. It makes me sad. A lot of people are making a lot of money off the death of these opioid addicts out there. And that's the reality of what we don't want to talk about, you know? Is that there are a lot of people that are making a lot of money out there off of the deaths of these people. You know, that are children, that are husbands, that are wives, that are neighbors, that are students, that are grandkids, grandparents, you know? And it's affecting. The other thing that's different about opioid overdoses, and this is something that we have really never seen before, is that it is affecting all generations right now. Because you see elderly people getting hooked on opioids medically, okay? You see people middle-aged getting hooked on opioids medically. You see younger people stealing their aunts and uncles, moms and dads, grandparents' medication, getting hooked on it, then becoming heroin addicts, a lot of them. A lot of these people becoming heroin addicts because it's easier and cheaper to get, which is the truth. Not a week goes by that I don't hear about somebody that I know of, or somebody that I know of through somebody that has died of an opioid overdose. Like, that's a problem. Can we stop being so scared to stigmatize addicts, that we're bad people, you know, blah, 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 whatever, and all this kind of stuff about... People are afraid to talk about what they're going through with their kids. They're afraid to talk about what they're going through with their spouses. They're afraid to talk about what they're going through with their grandkids or their grandparents or their wives or their husbands because of the stigma of addiction, and it means that we did something wrong. It means if you have a child that is an addict that you were a bad parent. It means if you have a spouse that's an addict or an alcoholic that you weren't a good enough spouse. It means if you were a grandparent or a neighbor or a teacher that has a student or a neighbor, you know, or grandchild that's an addict or an alcoholic, that you didn't love them enough, that you didn't care about them enough, that you weren't focused on them enough. And that is BS. It's just absolute crap. And it's not true. It is not true. You know, I believe that I was genetically born an addict and an alcoholic. Like I think many of the people that I know that are in recovery are or haven't made it to recovery. But I also believe that there are a lot of people that weren't genetically born addicts and alcoholics, you know? I don't think you have to be born an addict or an alcoholic to be an addict or an alcoholic, you know? And I have known many people that have fantastic parents, that have wonderful parents that did everything in the world for them and would continue to do everything in the world for them. And I'm not talking about enabling parents. I'm talking about parents that set boundaries and limits. I'm talking about parents that, you know, the first time that, you know, a counselor told them in their child's life that you need to do this or that, they did it, right? Or spouses that, you know, a counselor would say, you need to do this or you need to do that, and you need to go to Al-Anon or Nar-Anon, and they did, and you need to have individual counseling, and they did. And they did everything that they were supposed to do, and you know what? It still turned out the way that it did. And it doesn't make them bad people. And it doesn't make addicts and alcoholics bad people. We're not bad people trying to get good. We're sick people trying to get well. And it breaks my heart because I'm losing people around me all the time, you know. And I love and I hate this disease because I'm so thankful that I'm in recovery today. You know, it's like on one hand, I'm so grateful that I'm an addict and an alcoholic and I'm sober, because I wouldn't have the life that I have had I never gone through what I did and got sober and came out on the other side. But on the same hand, I hate what this disease does because it takes so many people that I love, and it hurts so many people that I love, and it hurts so many people's families and friends that I love. So I don't know what the answer is, you know, we just keep on talking about it. And we just keep on fighting for the fight, you know, to save lives and help people get treatment when they can. My sponsor, a true story, has hopped over fences in 4-inch heels, okay, and a hat, you know, and hair extensions at 3 o'clock in the morning to pull girls from crack houses because she was so scared she was going to get a call the next day that they were dead, you know? If I told you the stories of the lengths that people go to, you know? And I'm sure so many of you out there have done the same things. You know, you stayed up all night long and waited for your loved one to come home, or just a phone call or just something to know that they're alive, you know? And it's just like, it's so sad. It's so sad. But like at the same time, like I say, like Tanya and I talk about this a lot. It's like, where am I at on time? It's like at the same time, it's like, had I never gotten sober and I had never been an addict and an alcoholic to begin with, my life wouldn't look like it does. It just wouldn't, period, you know? I have a life beyond my wildest dreams today. And a lot of that is as a result of me having been an addict and an alcoholic and going through what I went through. And I wish that wasn't the case, you know? I remember my mom looking at me one time and saying to me, she said, we were talking about something, and she said, Gina, you really get it. And I go, what? She's like, you really get life. And she's like, in a way that I don't think, Peter, had you not been an addict and an alcoholic and gotten sober and been around such amazing people, and because I've been around such amazing people in sobriety, and I have had such great mentors, and I have so many people that are in their 80s that I consider close friends of mine, you know, that I never would have had I not gone through what I went through. It's true, you know? But at what expense? All right, well, I need to pull in here and call my friend back really quick to make sure it's nothing serious. It's kind of late for her to be calling me. Where can I pull in? To the Wendy's here. I promise I'm not getting any fries. Well, even if I wanted to, I couldn't because they're closed, so. I haven't had a Frosty in a long time, though. That does sound kind of good. All right, I'm gonna pull in here and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Leaving the Wendy's. I was just sitting there in the parking lot and it's like all dark where I was sitting, and I just remembered that I was talking to Caroline today, and we were talking about like shootings in Indianapolis. There's been like quite a few in the last week. And she said there was one in Nora, and I said, where was it in Nora? And she said, in front of Haybigs. Here's Haybigs right here. I was literally right next to it. Here it is, Haybigs. And then she said they went across the street and they were shooting in the Target parking lot. And there was one inside the Castleton Mall in the food court the other day. So, anyway, scary. Taco Bell's still open. I did my glitter lip gloss today. It was kind of a fail. It was kind of a lot of fail, but it was still fun to do. I think I'm gonna have fun doing those over there. On my Peter Does Stuff channel, I bought a bunch of food stuff at Meijer to do some food ones. So I'm excited about that. And then, yeah. It's interesting because Tanya and I will talk about addiction and we get so like kind of like heated and whatever about it, and people will be like, you get so upset talking about it, and Tanya always says, I don't get upset, I'm passionate about it. It's something that I'm extremely passionate about, and I think it's kind of hard sometimes, like unless you live in that world where you're exposed to, and that can be active or sober addicts, like on a regular basis. And it's like every time you go to a meeting, there's always somebody you haven't seen in a couple weeks, and you'll be like, so where's so-and-so? I haven't seen them in a couple weeks. Well, they went back out, and it's like, it's sad. There's so many people that don't make it, and there's tons of people that do, and that's the other thing, like that's the upside of it, right? And that's why I try to tell my story and share, like about like my sponsor and Tanya and other people that I have friends, because it's important that people see that it's not just, there's a community of us, there's tons of communities of us. I mean, even in Indianapolis, it's like I think there's like at any given time in the 12-step program that I'm at, there is 400 meetings a week. Like that's a lot of meetings a week, okay? That's crazy, isn't it? And, and that's just one 12-step program. There's several 12-step programs in Indianapolis, that have regular meetings, daily meetings, several times a day meetings, And I actually got sober at a different program than I'm in now. And not because there was anything wrong with that program, just because I was going to several different programs. And my sponsor said, I think it was my second sponsor, said that he thought I needed to just pick one program and stick with it, which is, it's worked for me ever since. So, I mean, I know other people that do. I mean, like I would go to another meeting in another program and have no problem with that, but that's just where I've made my commitment. I don't know why I got so upset tonight about it. Like, yes, passion, but feel like it's something that we're so afraid to talk about, you know, and it's like, you know, we'll talk about medical issues with, you know, our children or our family members or whatever, but like when it comes to addiction and mental health, we're so afraid to talk about it, you know? It's like we're so afraid that if I share what I'm going through and I share that, is this a turn only lane? Is this someone getting over? I can't see. If I share what I'm going through and I share what my family members are going through or whatever, or my friends, you know, then what that means is instantly I'm judged. Like I wasn't, you know, I didn't catch it soon enough as a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, or, you know, I didn't ask the right questions as a teacher or a neighbor, you know, I wasn't supportive enough. It's always like that. Like we're afraid that we're going to be judged. And the truth of the matter is, and let's just call it for what it is, the people are fearful of that because they are judged, period. End of story, you know? And not just with substance abuse, but with mental health as well. You know, it's like, your child can have depression or anxiety like Caroline and I were talking about today, or borderline personality disorder, you know, or bipolar disorder, or ADHD, or Asperger's, or whatever diagnosis. And because other people don't understand mental health diagnoses or don't choose to educate themselves, then it's like they kind of look at you like, I'm sorry, like with pity, or like, but it's always kind of like this judgmental kind of thing, you know, like, I mean, I've had friends of mine say to me before, like, I don't want to tell anybody that, you know, my daughter or son has depression, because they look at me like, well, what did you do for them to be so depressed? That's an ignorant statement. Like, that is such an ignorant point of view. I'm probably pissing people off tonight. I don't care. It's important, you know? People are dying around us left and right, and we're afraid to talk about it. We're afraid to talk about these things, you know? We're afraid to ask questions if we don't understand. You know, it's okay for people to say, I don't know what BPD means. What does those letters mean? Well, it means borderline personality disorder. You know, well, what is that? And then, you know, educating somebody and explaining to them the signs and symptoms if you have, you know, somebody in your life, or if you have that or whatever. But I also think it's a personal thing that, like, if I have certain things, like, it's my space, it's my right and my space in my life to share that I'm an addict and an alcoholic in recovery. But it's somebody else's to choose not to do that as well. And I think that we also have to respect boundaries. You know, when people don't want to talk about that stuff, that's completely fine, you know? Like, Tanya said something one night about, when she was on a vlog with me, about, you know, what program she's in, which is the program that I'm in, and said some stuff about herself, you know, and I said something about, like, Tanya, and she goes, I don't care. She was like, it's mine. I can say it, you know? And, but then there's other friends of mine that if I ever ask them to be in a video, or I've had actually quite a few friends that have said, like, I want to do a video with you about addiction and recovery. My sponsor would love to be in a video with me. I'm always like, no, I don't want to put you in a video, because then, you know, everybody will find you and know about you in 2 seconds. And she's like, I don't know. I don't care. I can handle it. But then I have other friends of mine that are like, oh no, like, I'm very private about my life, you know, and nobody in their life other than their close friends and family know that they're sober. My mom was like that. My mom was very private until, like, probably the last couple years of her life. Like, her first couple years sober, she was very careful about it. She would say, especially I think before she stopped working in schools, like when she got sober, and then, you know, she like took on a position after that in a school system, and she was like, and it was like for my mom always worked within learning disabilities, and she was like, I don't want people to know that I'm sober or in recovery. She was like, you know, people look down on sober people. And it's funny that, because I always from day one lived out loud with being sober, but it's funny how, I mean, it's not funny, it's interesting that people do. You could be sober for 20 years, and a lot of people will be like, oh, that's fantastic, you should be proud of yourself. And a lot of people will look at you, and silently, though, like, they're not typically the ones that will say that. The people that say that really typically mean it. But there will be people that will kind of like, you can tell as soon as you tell them that you're sober. This has happened to me a lot in my life, even recently, where you tell somebody that you're sober, and they look at you kind of like, well, how bad were you? Or what happened? Or you must have been a complete mess, right? Like, they're already judging you, even though you've been sober for half your life. You know what I mean? And so I think it was true. I think my mom was afraid. Like, you know, people in the school system found out that she was sober and worked a 12-step program, even though at that point I think she was 2 years sober or something, that they would have had an issue with that. But then when my mom stopped working there, and she really wasn't working anymore towards the end, she did a lot of retail stuff. She didn't care. She didn't. You know, she was proud of being sober. But early on, I can remember saying to my mom one time, you don't have a problem with people wondering why you parked sideways in the front yard, okay? But you might wonder, you care if they wonder or not whether you're sober? Like, I don't understand that way of thinking. She'd say, you don't understand, Peter. The other thing that my mom would talk about, and I've really witnessed this in the 26 years with my friends that are women that are sober, is that the stigma of women drinkers, whether they're sober or not, is always like, that poor thing. Oh, that poor thing. And her husband. How did her husband ever deal with that, you know? Oh, you know, guess she's not a lady. You know, it was always, I've seen my friends, I've had, like, you know, that it's just like, every woman that's an alcoholic is like sitting in a corner on the street, you know, just passed out with just, it's like this idea that people have, you know. And so even though they'll be like, congratulations. It's funny because like the church that we go to for our, I almost said the name of my home group. The church that we go to for my home group on Tuesday evenings, it's interesting because the women that like run the church's women's organization or whatever, like the Sinful Ladies organization, they like always put out cookies for us, right? And so like once a year we like do a collection, we give them money back, because it's so nice that they do that. They always, every week they have cookies for us, right? And they'll always put on it, like, for the, you know, so-and-sos, and then they'll, like, with a little smiley face. But what cracks me up about it is, as nice as it is, it's always kind of like, oh, those poor alcoholics and addicts, let's give them some cookies, you know? It just kind of cracks me up a little bit, but, you know, gotta make the cookies for the alcoholics this week, kind of thing. But they're so nice, you know, and they've done it for years and years and years and years, and, I don't know, maybe they do that for every group that uses that auditorium. I think we're the only group that uses that auditorium, though. But it is so nice. I do have friends of mine, though. Like, I've had friends of mine that when the church is going on and they have stuff in other areas of the church, and people will walk through like the back of our meeting or something to go out into the parking lot. Like, I have friends of mine that will leave. They won't share if there's something else going on. They'll leave. They'll say, no, I feel like my anonymity has been like jeopardized. Like, I'm not going to stay tonight. And, you know, the next time that they have something that's not going on, I'll come back. And I understand people that are like that, you know. Anonymity is a huge part of our recovery. And, so I love being sober. I feel so blessed every single day that I get up to be sober. I feel like it is just the most amazing gift ever. And I want it for every addict and alcoholic out there. But as my old sponsor used to say to me, you're not God. You don't know what God has planned for those people. Maybe God has planned for those people to get sober through other ways, through God or through family or maybe just on their own. You don't know what God has planned for them. It's true, I don't, you know. I just want happiness for people. And on that note, I am going to end this vlog. So I'm going to get off here now and listen to my true crime book for a little bit. And I hope that you guys are having a magically amazing Friday. I cannot believe. Is it Friday already? Oh my God, it is. A magically amazing. I hope you're having a magically amazing Friday and a magically amazing beginning to your weekend. And if nobody else has told you this today, I love you. Bye. I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Love ya! And I'm just going to say it now, so I don't have to turn off the camera and start it again. One more I love you. For anybody else that needs to hear it out there. 2 more I love yous. 3 more I love yous. I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Love ya!